You're listening to Forging Fluidity with Savannah Wishart and Griffin Coombs, where we humbly navigate the idea of primal purpose, exploring conversations around physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being on the quest for a truly conscious and meaningful human experience. I'm Griffin, and my co-host is Savannah. She's a self-love expert and fine art photographer. She uses life coaching and forest bathing photo sessions to create conscious containers for people to lean into vulnerability and explore their relationship with themselves.
And Griffin is a body awareness and breathing expert who uses targeted physical training and stress resilience coaching to help people become more physically capable and emotionally grounded.
Picking up where we left off with the relationship between being competent and being confident in yourself, we're asking questions about what causes confidence to go too far and turn into arrogance. And like in many of our conversations, these initial questions spawn a host of other questions, opening doors to insights and reflections that span the human body and psyche. We unpack the concept of growth versus fixed mindset and how natural talent could be the catalyst for arrogance if not nurtured properly. We also dive into our experiences with overcoming adversity, using the toughest physical challenges as an example. After all, you can't fake what your body can do. And how having conversations with our inner demons might be the keystone that solidifies a deep inner belief in oneself. This one takes quite a few directions, so don't forget to comment or message us about the ones you want more of. And now, enjoy the conversation. Hello and welcome back to another episode. Season 2 of Forging Fluidity. And this season we were just talking, because we always chat a little bit before we start the episode, and we were just talking about how much we're enjoying this season, and it feels really nice because we are feeling, I think, a little bit more relaxed in our conversation, and it's a little bit more authentic. And I'll speak for myself, and the first season was just a little bit, it was our first time doing this together, and we're kind of maybe trying to come off a little bit too rehearsed or too eloquent and less conversational. And it just feels like these conversations are getting more comfortable and more organic, if you will. And I think that has to do with us being a little bit more confident in who we are as we continue the conversation about confidence and competence and all that stuff. But Savannah got some feedback too. Do you want to share a little bit? Because it kind of speaks exactly to this.
Yeah. And I think even thinking back to how the last season went, I remember I would get so stressed before we would record. And I think I would even take notes sometimes or all of the time. And I'd be like, okay, I need to respond to this, and this, and this. And it felt like it was the most important thing in the world. And looking back at our episodes before we relaunched season 2, I also saw that we had one episode where we're like, we don't care. We're not editing this.
That's
and
right.
I think you spent a significant amount of time editing out pauses, and I think I would get tongue-tied and I'd forget what I was saying because I was just so, my nervous system was in an arousal state because it was like a performance. And now we are just going with the flow. But yeah, so my friend, I don't know, we haven't shouted out to our audience before. I think we can say their name, but
I don't know this person, so it's up to you.
Okay, Yelena, if you're listening, we're giving you a shout out. I'm giving you a shout out. So she listened to something from season 2, and she sent me a text that our older season was great, but that she can tell that we've both developed so much since season 1. The quality is different. The conversation is more engaging and enlightening, and we both work really well together. And then she did also give me personal feedback that she can tell a shift in me, and she doesn't know how to describe it other than that I'm stepping into my greatness. And I do feel like that is true. I do feel more grounded and competent and confident in that competence. So I do, I think it also probably has to do with us meeting in person now, then it just is more fluid because we've had the in-person dialogue where it's not just waiting for the other person to finish talking, but like immersive.
Yep. We really know what it's like to sit and chat with each other a lot without recording or microphones, whatever. But we've ingrained the dynamic. So it feels a little bit more natural. Yeah, I think that's great. I also think that you are stepping into your greatness. I think both of us are, as we mentioned on last week's episode, we're really cultivating the confidence through competence and then it building on each other. I probably should have listened to last week's episode to remember where exactly we left off in the conversation, but I think we wanted to talk a little bit about when confidence turns into something else, like turns into overconfidence or arrogance or kind of like delusions of grandeur. Because then when it's competence does not precede confidence, and if you're somebody who needs to find that sense of self and sense of belief in yourself from within first, because it's still, the jury's still out, like the chicken or the egg, but they both feed each other, but it's like, which one is first? I don't know. Probably depends on the person. But if you don't, depending on your reference point, that sense of confidence can become arrogance or overconfidence. And so I think we left off just wanting to explore the difference between that a little bit. And you were going to read something before we started, but then couldn't because of doggy company. But I think that's almost better because I would love to, like, before reading too much into like of a professional article on it or whatever, just kind of be able to navigate our own thoughts a little bit. But you were going to read the headline or a little snippet from it, right?
Yeah, I have a little snippet, so I'll just go ahead and read that. But yeah, I have my landlord's dog came to visit me, and she was just smothering me on the couch, so that took priority this morning.
As it should.
Yeah, I feel confident in that choice. But so the piece that I was Googling was just the difference between confidence and arrogance, and something that I found said that confidence is rooted in a genuine sense of self-worth that is not dependent on external validation. On the other hand, arrogance manifests as an inflated sense of self-importance and superiority. Arrogant individuals often exaggerate their abilities, achievements, or knowledge to assert dominance over others. So the two things that stood out to me was that it's about self-worth versus self-importance, and that when it leans into the more negative, selfish qualities of arrogance or overconfidence, it's really a power dynamic. So it is about asserting dominance, whereas confidence is just like, you're just your own self. So there isn't a competition with anybody else in that picture.
Do you think that asserting of dominance could come from fear or worry? Like, I think about how I have definitely been arrogant, like according to this definition, about lots of things. And I actually, if I'm not careful, I can fall into that trap of trying to like inflate my image or like be like project myself as more important, quote unquote, than I maybe am. I don't think it comes from a desire to assert dominance or control anybody, but rather like maybe from a fear that if I don't inflate it, like people won't take me seriously enough. or like people won't, people won't trust me or see me as an authority on a topic that I really am knowledgeable and competent. So it's just like a disconnect between like the value that I know I have somewhere deep down inside, but a worry that other people won't see it or won't value it, and that it is a competition, but not in a way where like I'm out to win, but it's like a competition like other people are going to dominate me if I don't make them believe that I'm like more important than I am. That's where it's come from, I think.
Do you feel like it has been influenced by social media, and like we feel like we need to be more and more extreme in order to catch people's attention?
Yeah, it's not even about boldness or extremeness. It's just about like, I've in the past I have like made it seem like maybe I had more experience than I actually had, or like I was working with more clients than I actually was, depending on who I was talking to or like whose respect I was trying to garner. And so it's not about like being extreme or shock value. It's just about how you portray yourself. And that can be very subtle, but it's also, if it's not honest, it's still, so I don't know if that's something different than arrogance. Cause to me, it doesn't seem, it's definitely self-importance, and it's definitely a concern with self-image, but arrogance might be more of like that I'm trying to dominate or control, or they could all root from the same thing. I'm not sure.
Well, I feel like part of the piece that keeps something from going into arrogance is humility. So I don't think of an arrogant or overconfident person as being humble. So I do think like as long as there's humility in it, then it doesn't go in that direction. But with what you're saying specifically, I think of the fake it till you make it kind of route. And yeah, I think like, and I look at the language that people use on social media or in email, and they're just talking about all of this we, and they structure like a very simple example is if it's a one person business, then they're saying we do this, we do that, because they create more of the feeling like it's a bigger business than it is. So
it's a perfect example of something I have definitely done.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening, I am a one-person business. I have one employee, and he is myself.
Sometimes we refer to ourselves as me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, and yeah, I can understand that, and I think that specifically can also garner a sense of community, like we, like me and the client, or me and the people that I serve. So that one's kind of blurry, but I've definitely done it. Especially when I first built my website a couple of years ago, I did it with the specific intention of manipulating the image that I already had a team. So yeah, the other thing that stood out to me, what this reminds me of, is the whole growth mindset theory. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of, well, I don't know of it as a specific theory, I don't think, but just generally, I think of the growth mindset as just a thing.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, it is like, I think especially in coaching culture, it's pretty pervasive at this point, but it came from a woman named Carol Dweck, and her research was in education. And so I used to be an educator. I was a classroom teacher and then a school administrator. And so we did a lot on growth mindset, and it reminded me of that because of the arrogant person's need for external validation. So according to Carol Dweck, and she may have updated this, it's been a while, I haven't been in the in schools in a while, but you tend to develop either a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset tends to come from kids who are praised not for how hard they've worked, but rather for the kind of end result or for the image or even for who they are. So someone who's always told, you're so smart, you're so talented, then they tend to develop a fixed mindset and will do anything that they can to achieve a result that helps them uphold that image. Whereas if children are praised more for, you worked so hard at that, or you struggled, but then you persevered and you figured it out. And that type of praise tends to embed a growth mindset, the idea that what I get praised, and the thing that is worth praise is the hard work and the journey and the figuring out the struggle. And so imagine an adult, how that kind of extrapolates into adulthood. You could see somebody who develops a fixed mindset to be, number one, to just not believe or not be so quick to believe that they can get better at something. So the type of people who say like, oh, I'm just not a math person, or I'm just bad at, I have no musical talent, I could never play an instrument, or I'm just bad at this, or there's that piece. But then there's also, you tend to end up fearing taking risks, because if you make a mistake, then it ruins the image that you're successful or that you're good at this or whatever. Whereas with a growth mindset, mistakes are part of the process and you welcome them, because what's worth it to you is the struggle itself. And yeah, so linking arrogance to fixed mindset, I think, is just something that popped out to me, because I do think that a lot of people who are concerned with self-image and self-importance are people who maybe never learned to ingrain an appreciation for the struggle. And then I include myself in that category. I was definitely that kid who was praised for all the wrong things and didn't learn how to work very hard, and I just wanted to be good at things without having to do the work to actually get good. And I didn't really care about the thing. I cared about being thought of as good at the thing, and didn't learn how to really work hard until I got to college, so
Yeah.
I don't know if that sparked any thoughts for you.
Yeah, I think, a lot of stuff, but I like there is the emphasis of enjoying the journey that stood out to me, and doing hard things. And there is I guess we do need to learn how to suck at something and to be okay with it. And we're not always going to succeed, and we have to be okay with failing and seeing those failures as an opportunity for growth and a building block. And I know there's a phrase called fail forward fast that I think I don't know where it came from, but I've heard it in my coaching program. But just to not wallow in that failure and to just move forward, see the lessons and opportunities that come from it, and then move on to the next thing. And that failure is information to move forward differently and to think, how can I improve this? How can I pivot? And to see that as an opportunity, which you can also lean into bypassing struggle as well. So there are some coaching conversations that I've had with people where they're just oh, I will just look at the lessons and the positives that come from it. And they just totally dismiss the pain that exists from the struggle or failure. And there needs to be space to hold both, and not to just be dismissive of something that is hard as well. And I did have a second thought about the growth mindset and children, and I don't remember what it was.
Can I ask you how did you develop your growth mindset? Did you have the attitude of, embracing the struggle and doing hard things when you were a kid? Or did that come later?
I think that I don't feel like I had that much of a choice, which sounds bad. But I just was put into like all sorts of sports. As I played soccer, I played basketball, I was on swim team since I could walk, I skied since I was 2. I played volleyball, like I played all of these different sports, so I was always busy. And then I skipped a grade, and then I was still in honors classes. And so my free time was very much dominated by homework and schoolwork. And like in the summer, we always had to do math workbooks throughout the summer. And if we didn't, then our books were taken away. So I was always reading. That was my punishment. And yeah, and so I think it was just always, there was always, and I played piano and violin. And then there was a point reaching adulthood when I was like, oh, not everyone was on swim team. Like I actually thought that was just what everyone did. And the same with playing an instrument. I was like, everyone knows how to play an instrument and everyone has done competitive swimming. And there was a point where I learned that was not the case. And something that I have kind of been unpacking is, now I remember what I was going to say, is that just emphasizing the difference between the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. I have such a hard time connecting with people. Like I love stepping into other people's shoes, seeing things from different perspectives, but it is really hard for me to connect with someone that has been living in a fixed mindset, because I don't think I have ever been there. And the more people ask me about like my journey, and the more I become aware. So this is another thing where I've been like, oh, everyone does self-development. Like everyone has done courses, everyone is working on themselves in some way. And the more aware I become that is kind of a rarity, I've realized that I've become more introspective to seeing why it's always been that way to me. It's not been this added extra, but it's been just ingrained in my path for so long. And I think that's because when I was a teenager, I began my journey with depression and anxiety and therapy, and at the time self-harm. And I have the physical scars that show that I struggled. And so as I was put on antidepressants, which when I turned 17, I was like, well, that was the wrong choice. Like I should have been given a lifestyle change instead. And 17 also was when I started CrossFit, and I started being paleo, and I started learning how to take care of myself. But I always had these scars on my body that were memories and reminders of like, I have something inside of me that I struggle with, and I want to be better, and I want to take care of myself. I want to do it without medication. And I think that just always, and I was like bullied as a child. We talked about this before. And so I always wanted to improve. And I talked with people who like, they weren't bullied. And it's very weird to me that people like haven't had that experience in childhood. And I just think like all of that adversity throughout my whole life with other people, like that just automatically put me on a path of I need to work on myself. And it did originate from more of a place of feeling broken, which now it doesn't. Now it's just I want to be my best self every day and improve 1%. But I meet people that haven't done self-development and they weren't bullied. They have parents that never got divorced. Like they kind of had it all okay. And so why would they why would they do self-development? Like, where was that turning point in their life where they're like, oh shit, like I need to change something. I need to grow. I need to do something differently. But they never had that fork in the road.
Yeah. It's almost like there's conscious reasons. If you're growing up pretty much anywhere in the world at this point, there's like something wrong with your lifestyle. Like it's just kind of built into where we are in 2024, the time this episode's being recorded. So just meaning like there's something about modern lifestyle that is not good for humans, and different people experience different parts of that, and some lives are better than others. But it's like what I'm hearing, your conclusion there, which is very insightful, is that a lot of those are unconscious because they're not necessarily brought to our attention. If you like grow up in mainstream America and nobody's talking about, you know, how like the quality of the typical American diet, then you're going to grow up thinking it's normal. And, you know, you might be eating stuff on a regular basis that's really bad for your body, but you're just not conscious of it. And then it's like if you don't have a conscious problem to be aware of to catalyze you to start to change and develop yourself, the things that aren't normal or the things that don't fit in with society, like being bullied, or, you know, going through mental health struggles or having an accident, or, you know, anything that's like very clearly, consciously in your face adversity, that then, yeah, nothing's going to put you on that path to self-development. And then all of those unconscious things, by the time they catch up to you in adulthood, are, you know, it's going to be a really hard, struggle to figure out how to deal with that because you weren't catalyzed sooner, if that makes any sense. It's like if we just keep living life unconsciously, eventually we're going to have big problems, and that might not come until after middle age, who knows, but we're going to have big problems. And so it's one reason, I guess, to be grateful for adversity is like we started to learn how to deal with problems sooner in life because we had the types of problems that a normal person or a fairly functional person doesn't have. So we're just kind of forced to learn. So yeah, does that make sense? I'm trying to make that articulate. I don't know if I'm doing a good job.
Perfectly articulate. And I mean, I think too, depending where in the world you live, just life is so comfortable that I like to think of if it's so comfortable, this is why I got into rucking, because I was living in Sweden and life was pretty comfortable. And you're in the city. Well, I was in the city. So you create crucibles that are going to challenge you. So if life is just like great and you're kind of coasting, you are going to lose your resilience, and you're not going to, and when you lose resilience, you're not going to be able to handle the difficult challenges when they come to you. And so doing rucking events and changing for rucking, training for rucking was one way that I thought in the city of like, things are pretty okay, and I'm going to create this challenge that is going to push me and then expand me and ask me to grow. So when you're rucking in the middle of February through a city and doing burpees in fountains and it's for 12 hours, like you get to 4 a.m. and you're like, I need to have a conversation with my demons while I have 45 pounds on my back. And then by the end of it, you were stronger. And so that resilience crosses over into, like, if you have a relationship problem clear up, then you've been doing the mental rep of training to know that you can handle it and you can be calmer, you can be responsive rather than reactive. And then,
yeah. And I think if we were to tie this back to like inner confidence, real confidence, that self-worth that stems from inside, that not needing external validation, it's like we almost need those demons. They're part of us. They're like our shadow, right? And if the demons don't tell us that we're worth something, then we haven't really accepted our own self-worth. I feel like, meaning like we have to go through some struggle and overcome it in order to really know our self-worth, which maybe supports the argument that it's competence with a P first, because you have to do something and, you know, develop like the ability to overcome something. Because if you like, put it this way, the fixed mindset comes from, like, you don't necessarily develop a fixed mindset just from out of nowhere. You develop it because you're good at something naturally and you're praised for that rather than having to work for it. So like you can, and I guess that would be the difference between somebody who can develop arrogance versus somebody who just, it kind of has really low self-esteem and low self-worth and doesn't care about themselves or doesn't think highly of themselves, but they're not arrogant. So like if you don't have a lot of natural talent at a lot of things and you weren't praised for that, but you also never learned how to work hard, you know, you're probably more likely to be the type of person who doesn't think highly of yourself. But if you're the type of person who is good at some things naturally, and then because of that is praised for it and never learns how to work hard, both people don't know how to work hard. But because the first one or the second one happens to have natural talent at something and starts to value the praise they get for that, that can then develop into arrogance, because you've never had to work hard, because you've gotten by with praise for just your natural gifts. And then not only have you not developed resilience, but now you think really highly of yourself because of those natural gifts. And, you know, it's like anything. It's like somebody seeing the UFC on TV and honestly thinking that they could go in and beat up like a professional mixed martial arts fighter or something like that. It's just, it can praise for stuff without putting in the work to develop it can really run away with you and cause arrogance. But also, like, if you, no matter who you are, whether you're naturally gifted or not, like because I know that the person who's has the fixed mindset, is naturally gifted at things and is praised a lot, but still hasn't gone through the work. I know that they know, at least I think that they know deep down inside that they haven't realized their potential and that there's something missing and that it's not a super deep. And I know, I'm just saying as an experience, like my 17-year-old self, you know, was like, music was my thing. You know, I went to college for music or whatever, and I wasn't humbled until college, but it was just like, I know I'm naturally musically gifted to an extent. Like, I know I just have a high level of musical intelligence and a brain that works musically. And so I was able to pick up on a lot of things very quickly. And of course, I got all the wrong kinds of praise for it. Oh, you're so talented. Oh, you're so good. And it's just like hearing that, I like craved that. And then I didn't want anybody to see me struggle. So I wouldn't practice or I would, you know what I mean? It was everything was a performance. So I could keep up the image of the musically talented one instead of pursuing stuff that would make me struggle. But then it got to my head that I was this great guitar player and whatever. It's just like, no, you're as good as somebody who doesn't really practice and just has a pretty high level of natural musical ability, which in the grand scheme of things isn't very good, you know, like, but this was inspired by what you said. So I want to tie it back there before I rant too long on this, but it's like that's a part of you. Like, the talent that you have is a part of you. And if you're naturally gifted at something, like, you don't want to not acknowledge that. But at the same time, I feel like that full self-confidence has to come from all of you. Like all of the
Yeah.
parts of you inside of you have to have played a role in you knowing that whatever it is about yourself that you're confident about. And that includes your demons, because you had mentioned you have to have at 4 a.m. rocking, you have to have a conversation with your demons. And it's like, it's almost like not until you get the approval of your demons are you really confident. It's like they're the final boss. It's just like you can have conversations with all different parts of you, but it's like when you hit the point of struggle where the demons have to come up, you can't hide them, you can't suppress them anymore. They're there staring at your face, and then you have to talk to them about it. Only through that conversation, metaphorically speaking, can you really go, okay, now I know I can do this, or I know I have this inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that reflection on it, because it really is like in these rucking events, you can quit at any time. Like you can run into your demons and say, nope, I'm going home. And then you don't earn your patch. And it's fine. There's no shame in that. But there always is the option to opt out. And I think that, I mean, I love getting to that point of challenge where you're just in a team, it's dark, it's shitty, everyone is suffering, everyone is hurting, and you get this really low point and you have to climb out of it. You can't distract yourself. You can't be like, well, I'm going to go sit on Netflix for a little bit, or I'm going to go have a drink, or I'm going to go do this thing that will distract me. Like there is no distraction in this moment. And it's so easy to just go to a 1 hour workout and that's kind of it. It doesn't take you into that level of depth with yourself and pull you out. So there is something very special about that kind of a container to work through.
Yes. You can, you can learn a lot from that. It's just, there's so many lessons. If you know the lessons that you're looking for, sometimes we don't, but you can find wisdom in so many things, like the whole David Goggins approach to things. Like that is the dumbest fucking thing you could ever do for your body, is to live that way. But for your mind, and to once in a while test yourself and take yourself into the depths and where you require that David Goggins mindset. Like that's something that I think we should know about ourselves. So
and I think that also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's it.
Okay. But to me, what you're saying as well, it leads back to evidence, like evidence-based training and growth. And when we get that evidence, that's the competence piece of it. It builds our confidence. And that is something that's why I think physical training is so important, because you can't fake a pull-up. You can't fake a push-up. Like if you were going and training consistently, like there's no faking it. You could go get calf implant or something, or you can have AI write you a paper now or whatever else, but there's nothing subjective about your physical training. And that is just such a powerful place to get the evidence, to be humble, and to be committed to doing the work, and you can't cheat it.
Yeah, I would argue that there is a lot that's subjective about your physical training, but I get what you're saying about this particular point. And the fact that like your performance at the end of the day is what it is. And I had a teacher, a martial arts teacher, and he had done a lot of competitive weightlifting and stuff in the past too. I mean, he's older now, but he used to say his favorite lift was like an overhead press or a clean and press or some form of press, because like there's kind of that's the highest you can lift a weight. It's just like to get it from the ground up over your head is just like there's not really farther that you can move that weight. So that to him, that was always just like a very satisfying display of strength. And it's the same principle. It's just like, did you pick the bar up over your head or not? It's like, that doesn't lie. And I do think that there's value in that. I also think there are a lot of traps in going too objective with strength training, but that is a different conversation, which we can talk about on another episode. I can lecture the world on internal body awareness and movement quality and all that stuff, but maybe we'll just leave.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you define, that was a silly statement for me to say to someone that is into so many unconventional fitness things. But I guess the not being subjective, being like having a very specific movement standard, then you can't eat whatever that specific movement standard is. And then the progress that you get from it.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's it. Like setting the standard for yourself, and then it just requires you to be honest with yourself. Like you could actually it can actually go the opposite way. Like for example, you can compensate. Like there's so many movement strategies you can use to get a weight from one place to another. But if you know what the strategy you want to use feels like versus quote unquote cheating or compensating, like then you can use the subjective a subjective measure to like make sure that you're being honest with yourself too. So you can use them both. It's like objective is just like, look, I'm going to do this and I'm going to lift this much weight this many times, and like that's the standard, and I did it or I didn't. And that's objective. Or you can say, I'm going to do this lift and I'm going to do it with my like shoulders locked into place and these muscles working together and feeling very connected. And which is going to mean that I can probably lift less than I could if I quote unquote cheated. And then it's up to you to be like, nobody's going to tell you, maybe if they can see it, if they're like a coach or whatever, but like, it's really you. Like, yeah, I got that extra rep, but was I really connected? Did I really feel everything turning on the way I wanted it to? Or was I compensating? And like, nobody can tell you that except yourself. So either way, like it's not, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about that stuff, and then but the point to your point is like your whole point was the importance of physical training. So like whichever way, it's not about are you using the objective or the subjective. It's about like your body is, for the love of God, the one thing that modern technology can't take from you, like your own connection to your body and doing stuff with your body. And like you said, you can, or meaning how you use your body, right? Not just how it looks, because you can get calf implants. You said you can get plastic surgery anywhere. You can have AI write a paper for you. You can doctor, you can use technology to doctor almost anything, but like doing stuff with your body, no matter which example that we use resonates with you, like just, it's so valuable beyond just feeling cool and being tough and strong, and like, that's all great. But it's even for you philosophers out there who don't train or see value in training, that there is value in physical training beyond your body. Even the philosophers, the ancient philosophers valued it.
This is true, and I guess, okay, the physical training part was a weird example because it's not, as you kind of broke down, there isn't really a clear objective versus subjective arena. And also, it's not the best place to even like, oh yeah, you'll be so competent if you go train, because there is a lot of ego in a gym space. So
yeah. But I think it's a great example. I still think what you said all holds up. Just there, and we just discussed some of the nuance around it, but it still all leads back to, I think, everything you said being valid, because whatever way you slice it, you've got to be honest with yourself. Like, you have to find what your objective is within you. And it's almost like training in spite of the egos in a gym culture. It's like you've got to go into a place where, I mean, this is my whole like approach to fitness. Like, it turns a lot of heads in a negative way of just like people misunderstanding what I'm saying. And it's like, for me to go in and be like, I know I could lift more weight if I did it in a way that is compensatory, but I know that that doesn't feel good for me. It's not going to lead to the adaptations that I want. It doesn't support my life. And it's like a test for me in the face of all these gym bros just, chasing strength and chasing numbers, for me to be like, I'm going to do it this way. That's like not as cool. And I'm not lifting as much weight, but I know deep within me that this is good for me and there's value in this. And this is the way that I want to do it. Like, it's a test to, again, fight those demons that need for external validation, that need for, you could think of it in as almost like the fact that there's egos make it more of an exercise in developing true confidence, your true internal compass. Makes it harder, but
Yep. Yeah. And I know I just keep thinking of CrossFit, and I know you don't love CrossFit. I do love CrossFit. And I recently started doing CrossFit again a few weeks ago after not doing it for 3 years, I think. And that is a great place to use as an example, because you do have the leaderboard there. And so if people are very focused, and a lot of the gyms have gotten rid of the leaderboard or made it optional. Fortunately, at the place that I'm at, there is the leaderboard, and they ask out loud for everyone's numbers at the end, which I love. But a lot of gym owners have said to me that they don't want people to have a competitive mindset, and they don't want to injure themselves, or they don't want people to injure themselves because they're going to compete with the numbers on the board. And when I first started CrossFit, it's 2009, so it was the more grungy, authentic CrossFit experience. And it wasn't about competing with the people on the board. It was about building that internal competition with yourself and knowing what you're capable of doing it, and then pushing yourself. Like, you push your weights a little bit to the point that maybe your form started to fall apart, and then you scale it back, and then you push and you pull back. And eventually, in that CrossFit space, you can look at someone's name on the board that was in class before you, see what reps they got, and you know that they're at a similar training level as you, and you can put some healthy competition into that without sacrificing form. And that can kind of give you a target to work for. But people have to learn how to manage that internal competition and not be focused on winning, and sacrificing everything else. So that is that internal awareness. And it's the internal awareness of what you can do, and it's keeping track as well, and knowing what your own numbers are and what your strengths are.
Yes. It's like learning what the struggle's supposed to feel like. And that can only happen through experience, probably with a little bit of guidance. That I totally agree with that, because here it is again, competence and confidence, they feed each other. It's like you need to know what the journey is internally, but then you reinforce that eventually with some external marker as just a measure, as just to see where you're at, but compared to somewhere or someone in the outside world. But I think people make that to the only thing. And if you completely lose the awareness of the internal, then ultimately it's for nothing. It is because at the end of the day, if you could be the leader for 30 years straight, and then at the end of those 30 years, if that accomplishment doesn't tie back to like a healthy internal sense of self and in a sense your compass, like what that means to you is, well, nothing, because then when you finally retire from training and somebody else is the leader, no one gives a shit anymore. And you're not going to give a shit either if it was only about the external. Once everybody else stops giving a shit. In fact, you're probably going to feel worse about yourself because the glory days are gone. So I think to wrap it up, this is a long one today. We're almost at 50 minutes, but hopefully this has been interesting for me. So hopefully interesting for our listeners as well. But
Yep.
for me, just the wrap up thoughts, I guess, are just like, I think I agree with what you read about the article, in that confidence being an unshakable sense of self-worth and arrogance being inflated and based on external validation. And the more nuanced bit being that arrogance usually develops from some level of competence that's probably natural and probably didn't stem from having to work at something. And that the work itself is what's going to develop that confidence. I think I'll leave it at that. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't think there's that much more to say, but just I always, especially with my time in Sweden and just the idea of lagom, which is just enough. It's like the Goldilocks of like not too much, not too little, and struggling to get people interested in growing there because they've always had everything. I just always thought there should be this perfect hybrid between the US and Sweden, because you shouldn't have to struggle so much that you live under a bridge if you fail, but you also shouldn't have everything handed to you. So adversity is such an important thing to encounter, to build character in yourself, to be able to overcome challenges and to grow and to build those positive personality traits. So I do like, I'm a fan of adversity, and that's kind of going back to the rucking example of like putting yourself in challenge if you're not facing a challenge naturally. And so I always think of like, you should create a challenge for yourself, or you should dive into something that's uncomfortable for you right now, because eventually life is going to do that for you. So would you rather like be in charge and have some control over that challenge, or would you like to just have your feet swept from beneath you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something for everybody to ponder. Do you want to you best learn to face the challenge now on your terms.
On your terms, exactly.
On your terms, there you go. So if you've pondered that question, if you're out there and you have your own reflection on it, let us know in the Instagram DMs. You can also let us know if there's a topic you'd really like us to discuss in a future episode. And maybe you can even ask us questions. I dream of a day where we're answering listener questions on a podcast. So if you have something to say, don't be shy. We love communicating with everybody out there, and we really appreciate your support. If you're listening, this is really great for us. So on Instagram, I am at the North Star Body. And you are?
I am at Prime Revolution with an F. Nothing.
Plural. Way more than one revolution when it's primal.
Yep. And you can always find our links in the show notes as well.
Yes, that's right. So make sure you take a look at those and visit any links that you're compelled to visit. And we will see you next time.
Until next.